Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity, for the invitation from the University Muhammadiyah Surakarta for me to be here to share our current initiative. And what I forgot to mention during the plenary session this morning is also thank you very much for providing opportunity for young scientists, young professionals to be part of the strategic discussion as the keynote speaker. So for today, I would like to share. I know the it's right, but I have a little bit of my presentation. I would like to share about the geography of risk and resilience knowledge in Indonesia. And in doing so, I will introduce our current initiative to come up with a new tool, next generation tool, also called for search. Essentially, we are envisioning this tool to help meeting the network of science policy and actions on risk reduction and also resilience building. As the moderator explained, this is part of the research funded by the Japan Society for Promotion of Science on the network politics of science and policy on disasters and climate change in Southeast Asia. Again, it's not really clear, but I hope you can see this blue line. This is the number of disasters recorded in Southeast Asian countries, in ASEAN countries, and ASEAN member states. What we have in blue is all the progression on the global agreement, global framework on risk reduction. So as we know, at the beginning of the 90s, we have the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction. It was then followed by Yokohama Strategy in 1995. Later, after the tsunami Aceh, it's also pushed the agenda, the adoption of the Yogo framework of action. And then later, in 2015 in Sendai, now we have this Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. And I think students who are taking a disaster management course will already familiar with this so much. But at the same time, disaster, in terms of the global governance of disaster management, is not only regulated through the discussion and the DRR dimension, we also have the humanitarian transformation. So back in 1991, there is a Joint General Assembly Resolution 46182 on strengthening the coordination of humanitarian aid. Again, after tsunami Aceh, there is transformation agenda, and in 2015-16, the humanitarian world comes up with the agenda for humanity, climate change, or some commitment on how to deliver a better humanitarian response. I would like to highlight here, 2015 is a new starting point for lots of global agenda, and Indonesia, ASEAN member states are pledging, committing to these 5 global agreements. We can add 6. So we have Sendai Framework for DRR, Agenda for Humanity, Paris Agreement on Climate Change, Mitigation and Adaptation, New Urban Agenda, and then SDGs to synthesize all of them. But at the same time, we have another tool that is Convention on Biodiversity, and also Addis Ababa Action Agenda. That's about financing sustainable development. The red one, this is actually what's happening in ASEAN. We are actually quite fortunate in ASEAN. We are a stable region. There is a foundation in terms of security and politics, so that we can progress in terms of how to make our region resilient, etc. This is what I actually exploring right now. Why the UN interested to hire me essentially is to provide a background information about how the interaction between regional frameworks and international frameworks interact. Because you see, all the 10 countries of ASEAN, Brunei, etc., Indonesia, and all the way to Vietnam, they are committing to this post-2015 global agreement. And at the same time, there are parallel processes at the ASEAN level. So, for instance, in the context of SFDRR and Agenda for Humanity, ASEAN countries also committed to what we call ASEAN Agreement on Disaster Management and Emergency Response, which was agreed upon in 2005. This is the first legally binding agreement within a region to contribute equally to the risk reduction in the region. But again, after that, there are so many other negotiations. So the question that I received from the UN GA is that, you see, the countries are pledging to the UN system all this agreement, but at the same time, in the region, they have their own mechanism. The question is whether the process at the regional level accelerating the efforts to achieve this global target, reducing greenhouse gases, increasing risk reduction, the 7 targets of disaster risk reduction, and etc. So that's the question. And then, so I also compare ASEAN and EU, SADC, South Africa Development Cooperation, SICA, Central America, and also SAARC, South Asia. I want to put my message up front in this context. ASEAN is okay. Sometimes we criticize too much to Indonesia or to ASEAN, but actually when we look into other regions, maybe ASEAN is actually better. Just to give an example, we have an agreement on, because apparently I have more time, better have 30 minutes, so I will spend around more time also to give some information. So in the context of ASEAN, when any of the ASEAN countries hit or struck by disaster, the initial thinking is how can we help? How Indonesia can help Philippines? How the other ASEAN countries help Palu, help Central Sulawesi last year? Actually in other regions it's not always like that. I was deployed as part of the recovery mission to Nepal after 2015 Nepal earthquake. Yeah, you know what India did? And the SAARC mechanism, SAARC is like ASEAN. You know what they did? They embargoed the fuels at that time, July 2015. So imagine humanitarian organizations, recovery institutions, UN agencies, NGOs, they need to purchase fuel from the black market. And imagine the cost, the money that supposedly go for relief item for the affected people, it goes to purchase fuel. And then sometimes we have some from South Asia. I always cite that example to some colleagues from South Asia. Particularly they're putting comparison between SAARC and ASEAN. At least ASEAN will not do that. Like Myanmar in crisis, but in Cyclone 2008, they are still refusing the UN, the Red Cross movement, they still have some reluctance. But ASEAN steps in to provide humanitarian access. So there's that. So my message, if there is a lot of, at least if we can make one key message from me, actually ASEAN is okay, it's not bad. We can improve for sure. Sometimes people say ASEAN is EU wannabe, but EU also have their own problems now. So yes, we are living in Indonesia. It's very stable now. ASEAN is very emerging, so there is a very bright future, in my opinion, for our country, for our region. And I think we as a young generation also can play an active part of it. Anyway, so there's that. The countries through this reporting mechanism, voluntary national review, country SLBR mechanism, NAMAS, National Appropriate Mitigation Action Committee, action to reduce greenhouse gases, and also NAPAS to adapt to climate change. All countries are developing this. So again, to remind you, one question that I get is how regional processes helping the global, the achievement of global targets. So that's one thing. But I have a second question, and this will be my main gist for today, is how actually this policy, this action over here, are informed by the most relevant and advanced science and technology available. So that's the key. I think we can see this, but this research explores lawmaking process and regulations creation against subsequent resource mobilization and outcomes of the era. This is a bit difficult, but this is the whole complex framework of the research. We have international frameworks here, we have regional frameworks here, and we have disasters over here. The process tried to investigate how the increase of agenda mobilization until new policy creation, undang-undang, PP, and etc. and action plan are created based on these events. And also the question over here, you cannot really see it. It's about how this policy being informed by science. So always the question is about how to connect science and policy, have a more evidence-based policy, and etc. You can name it, all the jargons. Now I want to give you a more precise example. If you can recall, 22 December 2018, we have a Sunda Strait tsunami, right? And then it was caused by an activity in the Krakatau. There is a displacement in the soil. You can see here. So this is imagery from Japanese aerospace agency. This is the flank of the Anak Krakatau in August. It's like this. And then this is in 24 December after the tsunami. So clearly there is a collapse of flank, and then it created tsunami. Very silent tsunami. There is no warning at all. And then of course, before that, you also remember that in September we have Central Sulawesi earthquake and tsunami. That the government also being criticized, no? That the warning was delayed, etc. It's a different story, but I want to focus on this one. So after that, this is the reaction in the media. Why it's different this time? Why the tsunami was not predicted? So many why. Oh, tsunami can be generated by the collapse flank in the sea and etc. That's questions keep popping up, and then the government started to defend the position and etc. And then of course, scientists also try to provide a more objective observation that actually this is an underappreciated threat of volcanic tsunami and etc. Basically, the message after 1 month is that this is an outlier event, something like that. I will jump here first. And then, including in Indonesian media, after that, lots of media and also discussion in the social media, they talk about this particular paper developed by Ian Cathy and colleagues. And the title is Tsunami Hazard related to flank collapse of Anak Krakatau volcano, which essentially this paper in 2012 already have a model or a simulation of a tsunami scenario because of Anak Krakatau collapse flank, which essentially more or less what happened in December 2018. And then the government started being bashed. Oh, government never listen to research, the policy did not consider latest scientific status, and blah blah blah. My main research focus for the past 8 years is on network modeling, social network analysis, discourse network analysis, citation network, etc. And I come up with this. This is not all, but actually BNPB's policy, BNPB Public Works, BNPG, this is Ministry of Health. There are some key research that very fundamental in terms of tsunami research that they already consider in terms of programming and resource mobilization. This is just some of the actual record is more complex than this, but I just highlight the highly cited one. So this made me realize that it's easy to blame someone. Oh, government never listen to the policy and to the science and etc. And then this paper actually popped up in this fundamental piece by my colleagues, Dr. Adalah, conduct a systematic literature review on the research strand on diadakan. And she also provides evidence that there is a significant increase in terms of disaster-related research in Indonesia. And she only used several data sets over here, so of course focus web of science and I think she also validated with Google Scholar and research field. But the main is web of science and focus. But the main point is it's increasing. So it challenged me. Maybe the government needs help, to digest all this research that are available. So that's the idea. There's also a question that I popped up in my mind. Why the ASEAN Science Disaster Management text this paper. Why INARIS, our platform, to know the risk profile of all down to local level in Indonesia, cannot pick up also that scenario? Yes, the answer is correct, because it's an outlier. And there are so many research out there. So we need something that can help government, help ourselves, help investors to digest the research that are available. And then another thing, from the past 8 years, I always come up with this network modeling during emergency response, before and also after. And it's always amazed people, oh, the network is so complex, oh, the disaster network or the disaster actor network is so complex. The policy network is so complicated to navigate the policy or diadakan. Yes, that's true. But usually when I talk with the minister, with the vice minister in BNPB or BNPG, the conversation stops there. Oh, the network is amazing, complex, finish. But then it's still difficult for them to digest that. So that's why in April 2018, I started to develop this platform. It's called CHARI. It's a web-based, web and location-based science policy action platform. So what we are doing here, we are pulling on the real-time basis disaster research repository from Scopus, Web of Science, Open Access Journal, and then of course Google Scholar, and then some universities repository we also already start to pull it out. And then we, of course, this is scientometric. You can also have the material later. Essentially the indexing of the research product and etc. And we overlay them with the INARIS. So what we are doing right now, and also the last one is a machine-assisted dynamic area preview. Why I developed this is because behind this is the complicated network. But for user, for policymaker, for investor who wants to know what are the risks in their area, they need something easier, something quick. So that's why that quickness, that swiftness cannot be generated by manual process like what Dr. Yanti did here. It's very fundamental, but it takes place. So it takes time. So that's why you develop this. You can see this at this point of time. It's already live, our beta version. So what we have is spatial-based disaster-related journal and research repositories down to village level. So we also develop this algorithm to detect, for example, if there is paper risk assessment of Merapi volcano. So that paper will detect, will have georeference, will georeference that to all villages surrounding the volcano. And then with regard to the watershed, if there is a research says risk estimation or the risk estimation, potential loss of agriculture production due to flooding in the Bengawan Solo watershed area. So we georeference that paper to all kecamatan along the Bengawan Solo. That's what we are developing, that automation process. So we talked with the Pak Wisnu from BNPB. He mentioned, he informed us, and he also became our advisor. You know, Mas Mizan, if there is an investor coming to BNPB and ask, what is the risk in this special economic zone, like in Tanjung Lesung that was struck by tsunami? I can show them INARIS. There is a clear tsunami risk and blah blah blah. But the conversation stopped there. I cannot advise him what should the investor do and what is the reference and who are the experts in Indonesia that can guide them with that. So that's why we developed this process. We already have the automatic crawling engine to pull it up, and then you see over here, if they click, we pull the title, the author, and also the abstract. And then if they click it, of course it will go to the original source of the journal. But we come up with a dynamic area brief. I think the video already showed it before, that the summary of the that village list and etc. is pulled based on the based on the research that is available in that area. That's what we are developing right now. And of course now it's open for public, but there are some other features that it should be customized to the need of the user. Maybe for the researcher, we also talk with Kemenristek activity. This can also help Kemenristek activity to prioritize which area that need more research on what topic. So that kind of conversation is happening right now. And then, yes, hopefully this can be, the new disruption to how we conduct risk reduction in Indonesia. And then we are developing this, and then feel free to collaborate with us in this journey. So I conclude here. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mizan. It's a very interesting presentation, and he showed us the complexity and the management of disaster in Southeast Asian countries, especially Indonesia. And I don't know whether we can break. This is already azan, and maybe the break is earlier than the schedule in this book. Is it okay? So the discussion is after lunch.
Oh,
It's okay?
yeah.
The reason? Yeah.
Berikut at 12. And here the schedule of work at 12. And this must. So I think it's up.
I just follow.
I'm coming from Fakultas Geografi, Universitas Kerjasama. And my question is how the blind people can access that information, because the blind people doesn't ability to see the visual map like us. And 1 year ago, I already made a tactile map for this tsunami mitigation at Parangtritis Beach, and it's not winning at the program kreativitas mahasiswa. So I stopped to develop that map, but it's very potential for the inequality for the blind people in Indonesia. So do you have any alternative answer for me to develop the tactile map for disaster mitigation, especially for the blind people in Indonesia?
Can I just respond first?
Okay.
So yes, thank you very much for your question. I think it's a very important point that in every DRR conversation we think about inclusivity. inclusiveness. So your question is, can the blind people access this? At this point of time in our current session, the answer is no. Unfortunately, no. As much as we want to make it more inclusive. And of course, our aspiration is to make this platform as inclusive as possible. But for people with disabilities, there is no answer yet. And of course, if you have the capabilities, maybe we can collaborate how to make this platform more inclusive. So that's one point. But I also want to answer, I want to give you another point about inclusiveness. That when we talk about inclusivity, especially the needs of the person with disabilities, if that is our aspiration, maybe sometimes the tactics is not only capacitating the person with disabilities, but the intermediary actors that are servicing them. This is not about knowledge management, but I will give an example about early warning system in Japan. So, what the government of Japan is measuring about inclusivity and how the government is being accountable to help people with disability and also elderly is not these vulnerable groups themselves. Yes, they are being capacitated, there's awareness and etc. But the one that should be fully accountable is the emergency responder. So last month, we organized this course for us for disaster managers in ASEAN countries. And the person, a disaster manager from Thailand, asking exactly the same question with you. And then the response is, no. As the more advanced the warning, the more difficult to a certain extent for this person with disabilities to get that warning message. The one that must receive the warning message is those in the panti jompo, in the SLB, the disabled school, and etc. And they are the one that should be capacitated to help them. And that's the one that's being measured actually in Japan. I think you've heard the terms KPI, Key Performance Index. The Key Performance Index of the respondent is the one that being measured. So when last month we have a typhoon hitting Tokyo, very close to my house, we already have warning and evacuation order for the elderly and people with disability. The one that need to be responsible is not them, but the person, that the organization, the institution that have mandate to help. Because at the end of the day, people with disability have a certain limitation. Yes, of course, we need to capacitate them, but the one that need to make sure they can be supported is the intermediary actors. Of course, we can have further conversation about this. There is two angles, because sometimes we want to be aspirational, and then in the end giving too much pressure to the people with the disability. Oh, you need to learn this, you need to be capacitated this. But from the very beginning, there is an underlying vulnerability for them. So that's why.
The second question. My name is Rias from University. I was wondering if there is any specification about the population for the students. I don't know if you already mentioned or not, but I was wondering what kind of the specification of the publication if that can be included for the base of the basis data of the publication.
Thank you very much. So we have this. This is it's scientometric. So yes, we consider journal article, books, master thesis, doctoral dissertation, etc. And also some grade literature as well. But grade literature we filter it with only the authoritative bodies for agencies, ASEAN communities, NGOs. We don't mind all the grade literature. So we have a filter that looking for what is this paper or what is this knowledge product. So we have the knowledge product, we have certain filter, and then the reader can also know, oh, this is a highly cited journal article. Oh, this is a undergraduate thesis or master thesis. We want to pull it all and put it here because maybe the needs of the needs of an investor, that the needs of an investor who wants to make a big amount of investment, who wants to know the most precise research, for example, hypothetically, our engine and also our team can help to guide them. Oh, if that is your research question, these are the key papers that you need to read, and then if you want, you can contact the expert. But imagine kepala desa, head of village, you already get lecture and you become aware, oh yeah, I need to make my village more resilient. I want to conduct a drill in my village. And then somehow we happen to see, there is a master thesis already talk about how to conduct a drill. Does he need the more complicated advanced research product? No, right? He can just go from that. So yes, we are also there hoping that it's already there and we're still finding out. Our conversation is that actually at this moment we don't have a good data set about what are the indigenous knowledge, the local wisdom that available in localities in Indonesia. And I think he's working on that, and once it's available, we have the database, we can also put it into the platform. knowledge, not only the explicit knowledge, but also the local knowledge as well. I guess the knowledge is there for how to do that.
Okay. Do anyone still have any question for Mizan? Okay. Is it clear? Everything?
Just want to conclude that the platform is still this is 8 months old, so this is still baby, but we already got an award in Sendai. But again, we are still improving, so we are open for collaboration from research institution, professors, and also students. Yeah, if project can be started with the young people, maybe we can